Welcome to another U Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast powered by Riverwind Casino. My name's Brandon Drumm, here with Parker Thune, and lots to talk about. Recruiting, some off-season talk. We'll get into that. We'll talk about Jaden Pettit, four-star wide receiver Jaden Pettit, deciding on Wisconsin, shockingly deciding on Wisconsin over Oklahoma or Missouri. The other one we'll talk about is Deacon Schmidt, who has a decision coming up tomorrow as we record this on a Friday morning. And then we will talk about, and it's four-star offensive lineman Deacon Schmidt, that we will talk about tomorrow. And then we will talk about several other decisions upcoming in July as Oklahoma looks to close out this 2026 class or get close to. And then you know what? I think we're going to just talk about, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about KJ Ford, if we didn't talk about, oh my gosh, Jake Krell, and if we didn't talk about Deuce Gerald's, obviously three defensive linemen that Oklahoma is in on. And in on is a operative term here, depending on how you want to look at KJ Ford and Deuce Gerald's. But in particular, Jake Krell, Oklahoma is in great standing, and we'll dive into that as well as he's near five-star status at this point as a defensive end. But first, we want to thank our sponsors.
And that starts with Riverwind Casino, as always, the presenting sponsor of the Under the Visor podcast. Riverwind Casino is OKC's premier gaming destination and has been for nearly 2 decades now. Almost 3,000 electronic games, table games, bars, and dining options, plus the best live music in the metro. It's no surprise that Riverwind is always a good time. The pod also brought to you in part by Jani-King, a proud partner of OU Athletics and the greatest team to ever clean, delivering spotless results and solutions from stadiums to any size business across the country. So check out which of those solutions is right for you or your business at janiking.com. That's JANIKING.com.
All right. Look, Parker, four-star wide receiver Jaden Pettit chose Wisconsin.
That's an interesting business decision, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because what do we like? And look, it's not a knock on Wisconsin. It's just a reality. The style of football that they play is not very conducive to production at wide receiver.
It is not.
In fact, I was just scrolling through Twitter this morning and ran across a feature story on new Wisconsin offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, where he's quoted as saying something along the lines of, "Let's get in a phone booth and punch each other a whole bunch and see who walks out." That's the style of football we're going to play at Wisconsin. That's the style of football Wisconsin has been good at playing over the years. They've had many a stud running back graduate and go on to success in the NFL. Melvin Gordon comes to mind. Jonathan Taylor comes to mind. I guess Ron Dane was kind of the OG all the way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But Wisconsin is a smash mouth, old school, Big Ten style football team. Objectively speaking, Brandon, you're going to have a lot more opportunity at a place like the University of Oklahoma if you're a wide receiver than you will at the University of Wisconsin. So it doesn't feel like this decision was made necessarily with opportunity in mind. Yet the decision was made for one reason or another. It was definitely surprising from the OUN because they felt like it was them in Missouri. Missouri felt like it was them in OU. Should both of those schools probably have given Wisconsin more credit than they did in that whole process? Yeah, you can make that argument, especially after he followed up his Wisconsin OV with a midweek unofficial up there. But even so, a very abrupt decision, a decision that took a lot of folks by surprise. And it leaves Oklahoma really up against it in terms of wide receiver recruiting because Pettit's decision came just hours after four-star wideout Craig Dandridge out of Cambridge, Georgia, chose UGA over OU. That was not as surprising. OU had been running second there for quite some time. It always felt like getting past the Bulldogs was going to be really, really tough, especially with the proximity factor and the prestige factor as well. I mean, you're looking at a program in Georgia that has won 2 national championships in the last 4 years, and Oklahoma, clock's ticking on a quarter century since they climbed that mountaintop. So Georgia keeps Craig Dandridge home. Jaden Petitt going all the way from Naples, Florida to Wisconsin. Is it Pettit or Petitt? I guess I waffle between using both pronunciations. I don't know conclusively which one it is, but I guess we don't really have to worry about that anymore because he's a Wisconsin Badger. Any way
Right.
you slice it, Oklahoma is going to have to make some stuff happen with the top uncommitted wide receiver targets left on their board because they've had 3 decisions go against them this week between Petitt, Dandridge, and Dallas Dickerson.
I They have, and that's kind of what I'm about to get at here with this question. We all know Jim Nagy's amazing at what he does, scouting, evaluation. He knows how to build a program. Is there a sense, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm not. I want the listener to think about this. I want you to think about it. You'll obviously be able to dive onto it in real time as we talk here, but Oklahoma seems to be already playing the profit sharing game. Others are not. Why?
What do you mean by that?
I was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, nobody's like really following that yet. Like everybody's front loading everything. Everybody's doing Oklahoma isn't front loading their contracts right now in a lot of ways. From my understanding, now they may some of them, but there are some that they're not. Like they're being very, very judicious, very, very, they're staking claim to what they value this player as, and they're holding true to it, and they're not trying to budge. And others are going, you know what? Until July 1st, until they say we have to, until they slap us on the hand and say otherwise, we're rocking the way we've always rocked when it comes to this. Should Oklahoma still be operating that way, or should they operate within the confines of what is allegedly going to happen on July 1st?
Well,
Because
that's
there's
kind
a
of the
lot
thing,
of
Brett.
court
Like,
stuff that's going to be going through. We
yeah,
know
and
that.
I'm not going to fault any university. I'm not going to begrudge any university, any athletic department for the way that they're handling it all right now because there's so much that we don't know about how
There
this
it
is all
is,
going
yeah.
to unfold. And so it's really, really hard to make a clear judgment on, well, they should be doing it this way versus they should be doing it this way. I don't think anybody really knows what
But
the
if you're
future
swinging and
holds.
missing because you're doing things a certain way and other schools aren't, like what is that not very telling? Like, hey, like maybe we need to rein back this idea of how we want to operate for just a bit. I understand wanting to get it down and perfect it for when
Yeah.
all the court stuff gets through and all that type of stuff. But how much is that going to hinder you leading up to that?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if you look at the specific position that we're talking about here, which is wide receiver, it's becoming apparent to me, Brandon, that wide receiver is a position where Oklahoma's going to have to pay good money to whoever they want to land. That's just the sum and substance of it at this point. If you want to land an elite blue chip talent at wide receiver, you're going to have to pay him a big chunk of money.
Yeah.
Is Oklahoma prepared to do that with either Davian Gross and or Jordan Clay? Because Gross, the 4-star wideout out of Lone Star High School in Frisco, and Clay, the 4-star wideout from Madison High School down in San Antonio, I think they're going to split those two with Baylor. I think one of them winds up at OU. I think one of them winds up at Baylor. Not sure which one yet. I would lean OU for Gross, Baylor for Clay, as we sit here today.
Mhm.
But I I don't necessarily know that there's a world where both schools, be it OU or Baylor, get both guys. That seems like a stretch.
Yeah.
However, with the knowledge that you have, well, it's specifically in Gross's case, you have Florida looming, you have Houston looming, and you've lost recruiting battles this week to Kentucky, Georgia, and Wisconsin for blue chip talent at wide receiver. I think by hook or by crook, Brandon, you're just going to have to pony up the funding to be able to go land an elite wide receiver at this point because you're also running out of options. The options are slowly removing themselves from the equation.
Do they pony up for Zachary Turner?
And that, not to get around to that one, I'm glad you went there. Zachary Turner is a guy that Miami wants as a tight end.
No.
Oklahoma wants to play him in a very versatile, very variegated role as
Debo
primarily a wide
Samuel
receiver.
is how
Yeah,
they viewed
Debo
it.
Samuel, as you've said. But the trend seems to be Miami. Again, I don't think we're looking at it being a case of the opportunity being better at Miami because who's going to put a more unique pitch in front of Zachary Turner than Oklahoma? But in this day and age, a pitch like that is no longer good enough.
Nope. And that's I think that's the frustrating thing for OU fans is they're watching a blue blood program pretend and I'm not trying to take shots at anybody, but they're pretending that they're not right now, like in how they're going about their NIL. And the weird part was is like the last two cycles they pretended like they were a big time blue blood program. They were they were throwing Shank around like, hey, let's go. You want to play? We'll play too. And now that they're trying to get into this profit sharing mode of and kind of the salary cap and all that type of stuff. And people are publicly saying they're doing it, but you know what? We can tell by how some of these recruitments are going that that's not really the case. Or Oklahoma, if everybody truly is doing that, let's go back to this. If they're truly doing that, Oklahoma, like you said, needs to figure out a better way to go about the wide receiver position because they're like Casey at bat, man. Like he's swinging and missing, bro. Like he's it just it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't in a program that runs the spread, the spread, Parker, which means you use the wide receiver on every play, probably 80% of the plays, right? That's probably a little hyperbole. It is hyperbole. Probably 65% of the plays you're going to use the wide receiver, but you're not going to pony up.
Well, and here's the other thing to consider, Brandon. As we sit here today, we are 1 week removed from Oklahoma scoring, for my money, one of the biggest recruiting wins nationally of the entire cycle to date, beating LSU for Bo Bentley.
Yeah,
You
but
got yourself a legit top of the line national top 10, according to some services, top 5 quarterback in Bo Bentley. You're going to have to surround this guy with weapons.
yeah,
And right now, Oklahoma's only receiver commit is Daniel Odum, who, while it looks like he's going to stick with his commitment to OU, can you take that to the bank, Brandon? Knowing that a big
yeah.
part of the reason he committed to OU in the first place was the relationship with Jaden O'Neal. Again, not saying one thing happens or one
Mm,
thing doesn't happen, but look, the
can I
fact
can I
that
tap on that real quick? Because I talked to somebody around the O'Neills yesterday, and they said that they hadn't really talked to Odom since I want to say since the Bentley stuff started to range up, and it seems like the relationship swung in Bo
Mhm.
Bentley's manner behind the scenes.
and that's encouraging, but let's play this out here.
Okay.
August rolls around, September rolls around. If at that point, and this may not be the case, I think you hope and you expect that this won't be the case, but let's say Oklahoma comes up empty with Jordan Clay and Davian Gross somehow.
Oh gosh.
If Daniel Odom's the only wide receiver commit at that point, or maybe one of two, whatever it may be, the point is if Oklahoma's wide receiver class is looking skinny,
Does he
I
stick?
think that's going to increase the odds that other programs from across the P4 are coming around and sniffing
That's probably fair.
with Daniel Odom in particular. So you're going
Hmm.
to say, man, whatever Oklahoma's doing or not doing, wide receiver recruiting, if we raise the stakes and give them a battle to keep Daniel Odom, that's probably a fight we can win. I think that's going to be part of the rationale at that point for programs that are interested in circling back around with Daniel Odom is, hey, if we drive the bidding price high enough, is Oklahoma going to be able to hang with us? Are they going
And
to be
the
willing to hang with us?
and the weird part is that you would think after last season, of all things after last season, that you would prioritize wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. I know this is something Oklahoma can do, right? Like, we're not talking we're talking about a matter of willingness here, not a
Yeah.
matter of ability. Because for instance, last cycle, 2025, there were schools, big schools, that come the fall were looking to flip a manual choice. Oklahoma took care of that.
Mhm.
And that really never made it to the public eye. Other programs' efforts to flip a manual choice because Oklahoma was proactive in shutting that down. And so I know the capability is there. It comes down to whether the willingness is going to be there.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you're going to have to be willing because you can't come up empty. You can't come up short. You can't come up skinny in this class at wide receiver, knowing that you have Bo Bentley set to sign in December. And with a guy like that, a guy as talented as he is, you want to make absolutely certain that as a program, you are giving him the best chance to succeed and giving him
Yeah.
the best chance to lead your program, hopefully, eventually, to a national championship. And it's much easier. There's a much clearer path for that to occur if he has elite talent lining up at wide receiver that he can distribute the football to.
Yeah, that to me is the biggest rub here is I almost feel like you don't want to call it dollar generaling or maybe holding or something like that where you're going for the brown bag special when it comes to wide receiver, but it feels like they are willing to do that if they have to. And I can't see a world where that works in the SEC. I just
Yeah.
can't.
Well, and for instance, Jaden Petitt commits to Wisconsin yesterday, and Oklahoma's immediate recourse is going and offering Joel Wyatt, the
The top
four-star,
50 kid.
yeah, nationally coveted player in the 2026 class who is 1 week away from making a decision. He commits next weekend.
Are they gonna just
Is it
throw all their bones at him now?
is it at all reasonable to expect that you have a shot with that kid?
No.
I mean, if you're trying to play the long game and try to flip him, okay, then maybe it's a different conversation. But it just seems a little odd to me that of all the guys you could have picked to go after once Petitt settled on Wisconsin, you chose a guy that is committing next week. Again, maybe there is a greater strategy here of which I am unaware. And if that is the case, I will eat all of my words. But it seems, and I hate to use this word, Brandon, but it seems kind of pointless, doesn't it? The kid's committing somewhere next week, and it's not going to be the University of Oklahoma
Yeah.
unless you're just going to up and drop a Godfather bag. Which, again, if that's what you were willing to do, we wouldn't be having this conversation because would have just gone and done what it took to get Craig Dandridge and Jaden Petitt, right?
Wish they would have offered him while we were there, standing right next to him at the 5-star challenge too. Thanks a lot, Emmett. I would have loved to have gotten an interview with him. But and here's the funny thing is like I stood next to that dude like probably half the camp. Didn't think much of it. Just thought he looked really good. Was like, oh, he's a good player. Like, and the only reason why I watched him and stood next to him is because he, for some odd reason, he always gravitated back over by the media. Like after he would do his reps, and he would just stand there. And I didn't say much to him. It's like, hey, good rep. Like that's all I like. Didn't know him. I knew he was long and lanky and like was just demolishing everybody that tried to guard him. But man, that would have been awesome, Parker. I don't understand why they waited that though. I mean, honestly, that like you said, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're trying to flip him, but in the long game. But getting him to come on my bet, I'm just going to throw this out here, is if they build a relationship and if anything comes to pass, he will visit on September 6th. Just throwing that out there for the Michigan game, just like everybody else that's big on OU's targets list, whether 26, 27, feels like everybody's going to be there that weekend. It's going to be one of those weekends that end up being epic for Oklahoma as far as recruiting goes. And we're already kind of seeing that. So that's called a segue, Parker. Um, and let's talk about that because at the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, depended on who these guys talked to, which is funny thing is like they would talk to some local people and they would bring Oklahoma up. They would talk to national people and not local, just me. That wasn't the case. But they would talk to national people or regional, big regional people. And Oklahoma was hit or miss with these two as far as I brought up. So particularly one brought up Oklahoma quite a bit. The other one did not. The one that brought up Oklahoma quite a bit was KJ Ford, the 4-star defensive end out of Duncanville. And you hear that word Duncanville, and instantly you go, probably not going to happen. I would probably agree with you. However, the official visit is still on for Michigan. The issue you run into is that Oklahoma's in good standing with D'Anthony Lafayette out of Florida, who just took an official visit to Oklahoma. And for my money, I think Oklahoma's in great standing there to the point where it feels like it's trending towards OU.
Watch, he'll go commit to Pitt.
Yeah, you'd be hilariously correct. And because I will say this, even though it is trending towards Oklahoma, I did talk to somebody the other day. I was like, well, what do you do with defensive end if KJ Ford is really serious and does take his OV? I said it will work itself out at defensive end. And the reason I asked that is because they already have Matthew Nelson committed to him. They already have who else do they have committed?
Daniel Norman.
Parker. Daniel Norman. Are those the only two?
Yep, those are the only two right now.
And they're leading for Jake Krell, the potential 5-star defensive end out of ING Academy. So, I mean, what are you going to take 5 DNs if that really happened with KJ?
Well, let's be realistic.
It's going to work itself out.
5. Yeah,
you're not
going to get 5.
So it's going to work itself out one way or the other. It's going to work itself out, and I think that source was spot on. But how is it going to work out? Is KJ Ford, is he going to commit before the season like he kind of wants to? Is it going to be and look, there's a lot of people that, oh, Alabama. I talked to multiple sources this past week. Alabama doesn't feel like they're leading for him, which is weird. Now you got to look at
it's a bizarre recruitment.
It is
overall.
such a bizarre recruitment.
Yeah, which is why I don't think you.
Yeah, I don't
think you make any assumptions. I don't think you approach that recruitment with any expectations at this point with KJ Ford. There was a time where Oklahoma led, and it felt like they led pretty substantially. Things have gotten a lot more unclear over the last 3-4 months. And so, look, if I'm Oklahoma and I'm Miguel Chavis, getting Daniel Norman this past weekend was huge because I think he's going to be a really good player. Matthew Nelson is kind of your pet project, right? A guy that is not going to be ready in year 1 in all likelihood, but that has an immensely high long-term ceiling. If you can pick up D'Anthony Lafayette, who had 16 and a half sacks last year as a junior, playing at Lake Nona High School in Orlando, that's another valuable pickup. And then the hope would be that you cap it all off with Jake Krell. And if you land 4 defensive ends in the same cycle, you can accommodate that. You can accommodate those numbers, especially, and if the 4th is Jake Krell, you're going to accommodate it either way.
There you
go. But you only signed 2 last year in CJ Nixon and Alex Shield Knight when the plan initially was to sign 3. So you're okay, I think, with going a little bit overboard in recruiting that position in the 26 cycle. but the big wild card, and that's really all it is. That's all you can call it. KJ Ford is the wild card. If it happens, great. I'm not counting on it at this point.
No. Do you think the
I'm
official visit takes
genuinely,
place?
well, yeah, and I was about to say I'm not even counting on him taking the official visit in September.
I don't want to go there yet just because I talked to him quite a bit and I talked to other people, and I'll say this, there was multiple people, multiple players, Oklahoma related, that brought up KJ Ford to me and were like, "Hey, he's visiting." Like, and they were adamant about it. Now, maybe he's telling his, you know, compadres that what they want to hear. I mean, I don't know. I can't like Parker said, this is such a hard recruitment to really put a finger on because he's done so well. The one thing that I can say is, like, if you're talking relationship wise, and I know you fans hate hearing this part, Miguel Chavis takes the cake with that family, and I've been told that by numerous people. And so maybe there is some legitimacy there with this whole ordeal in the Michigan visit. I'm not ready to write it off, but I'm also not ready to sit here and go, it's gonna happen. I'm kind of a wait and see. I want to see how the next month or so plays out with this recruitment before I dive in and make a, a concrete statement one way or the other and how I feel about it, because I just don't know. I just don't know. It is that hard.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, the Deuce Gerald situation, I think I can look. He says he's still going to take the visit, or at least it's in the works. Not quite set 100% set in stone, he said, but it's in the works and it's never been taken off the table for Oklahoma. In that same breath, he said that he and Todd Bates talk, but they don't talk quite as much as they used to. Now, here's what I think's going on. I think it's Ole Miss, Ohio State, kind of the teams to be. I've heard of some other names thrown out there, but it feels like those are the two, right, Parker? Like, it just felt like Ole Miss, Ohio State. He's a legacy at Ole Miss.
Oregon
Ohio
as
State,
well.
Oregon was the other one. That's right, correct. Those were the three that kind of pop off the screen a little bit there. When it comes to Deuce Gerald's, I also know that Jim Nagy is a metrics guy. He's a height, weight, length guy. Deuce Gerald's does not fit that bill,
No.
but he is a badass football player. He is unbelievable. And I'll be honest, if you go that route and it's a route where you feel like you don't want to push for him, I say it's a mistake. I think it was a mistake not to, but that's my opinion. I just think he's a really good player. However, let's say they missed on T-Ron Richardson.
You can't do that at this point.
No, you can't. You
You
can't.
got to have that guy.
If they do, if I'm them, I go to Deuce and say, hey, remember that official visit in Michigan? Yeah. And how much did you say you want? Done. Come on with it, brother. You have no choice at that point. You have no choice. I know there's a lot of fans that think you don't have a choice, period, that you should do that regardless because of who he is and where he's ranked and all that type of stuff. And what we saw at the Rivals 5-star camp, I would tend to agree. He was awesome. Anytime you pick up a 6'6", 315-pound offensive lineman and shove them back 7 yards in the air, you're special. The not very Parker, not very, like, all of us were going, oh my gosh. That was one of the wildest things I'd ever seen. But again, just my opinion there. I wouldn't hold my breath. That brings us to Jake Krell, who is an absolute monster off the edge. He's a good 6'2", 6'3" now. He got taller. He's not the biggest guy though. He really isn't. His frame isn't like huge. Like his shoulders aren't like hugely wide. He's not hugely long. He does have long arms, but not like what you're accustomed to at defensive end. He's going to remind a lot of people of our Mason Thomas, probably a taller our Mason Thomas, but he's going to remind you. He's already almost as big as our Mason too, by the way. So I don't know how much more weight he's going to throw on. Probably another 15, 20 pounds would be my bet. And he's probably going to stop at like 255, 260, and that will probably be it for him. But his first step, his tenacity, his competitiveness, and if he ever commits Parker, I'm going to tell this story. I'm not going to tell it yet because I don't want to get OU fans' hopes up. But it's awesome, and it's going to endear him so much to the OU fans. But again, I don't want to do it just yet. But it is a great story of what happened after one of the reps and why he went after somebody on the offensive line. And OU fans are going to be going, hell yes. That's the player that we like because he did it on purpose and he did it for a reason. And that's about as much as I'll say at this point. But oh my gosh, that was about the time that I was like, okay, this guy's going to go to Oklahoma, though. Like, he fits. He fits. Everything about him screams Brent Venables and Miguel Chavis, Parker. Would you agree with that?
I would. He's an OU style of guy.
Oh my gosh. Everything about him. And that's what everybody was talking about there. They're like, he just has no quit. He wants to go at everybody. If he lost a rep, he was like, one more, I'm going again. And he would always win the second one. Like, he didn't lose very many. I'm just going to throw that out there. But that was on the account that he actually did lose one. So, yeah, I like Oklahoma here. I don't know that Florida is high as I thought maybe they were there. I don't want to say that like, and I'm saying that with a voice inflection because I'm still kind of confused a little bit from what I was hearing and just kind of the vibe I got from him. But um, I think Ole Miss is a bigger player than people are giving credit for there. I really do. Kind of a scary deal. I I do think from talking to a couple of people that were on that visit when and he took his OV to Oklahoma on the 20th through the 22nd for the champion barbecue. Almost everybody was like, yeah, that's an Oklahoma guy. Vibe Oklahoma. Everybody I talked to. So, and that's players and everything that were there. Like the vibe they got was Oklahoma. I don't know, Parker, did you get anything different?
No, man. I look with the understanding that there's a long way to go in that process. I like OU right now.
But is there a
Why?
long way to go? Because he told me he wants to get it done sooner than people think.
I think that one lasts into the fall.
Oh,
If I'm wrong, great, because that probably means
what do we
OU.
constitute
If he
fall?
September.
Is it August, September? Okay. Oh, okay. Because a lot of people were talking October. So September, I guess, would be sooner than people initially thought. So I guess you're kind of on his time scale. Yeah, I would go with that. He's going to be there for the Michigan game. So there's that. Wouldn't that be interesting to commit on an unofficial visit? And I think that's Oklahoma's hopes is to, if they beat Michigan, that they just start just going on like a rampage and finish off the 26 class and start really building up steam for 27 with that weekend. So, but we'll see how it goes. Hey, Deacon Schmidt, 4-star offensive lineman out of Colorado, is going to be announcing here over the next 24, 48 hours. Vibe check. I got Oklahoma. What about you?
My vibe is the same as your vibe on that one. I like the Sooners to get it done, which he and Noah Best, I mean, they're going to be it for Oklahoma at the end of the summer in that offensive line class. That definitely feels like a position group where Oklahoma's got some additional work to do going into the fall, at least for another interior body, because we know they want one, right? Will Conroy decommitted even before Will Conroy decommitted. They were making a run at Devin Robeson, who wound up at TCU. They were making a run at Desmond Green, who wound up picking Florida. Oklahoma needs at least one more interior offensive lineman. So monitoring that situation going into the fall is going to be quite interesting.
So I know people hear that and they're going to freak out a little bit, but also take into account, folks, that they got a really, really amazing class in 2025. And they got some really good transfers that have, multiple years that they brought in. So, yes, you would like more than two in the class, preferably probably three in the 2026 class. But at the end of the day, it was always going to be a hard sell for Coach Beatonbow and this staff to say, hey, come in after all these big time guys we brought in 25 and some of the top offensive line transfer portal guys. They have multiple years, by the way, outside of Derek Simmons, right? So come follow all those guys and see if you can compete. And with Devin Robeson, that was one of the biggest issues was, do you see what you all brought in last year? I'm not going to get to play for a while. I'm going to go over here where I'm going to play early. And that was it. Like that was the issue there.
Yeah.
I was told that on the official visit, like he was asking people left and right, like, do you think I can play early? Do you think I can play early? And that was when people were kind of like, is he worried about how deep we are on offensive line now? Isn't that, it's wild how the optics change, right? Between last year, they were so thin. This year, everybody's like, wow, they're so freaking deep. But it's crazy. Hey, welcome to transfer portal world.
They're young on the offensive line, man. They really are.
They're young.
Like they're experienced, but they're also young. Let me think. The only guys that are aging out this next year are Sexton, Derek Simmons, Fabechi Wiwu. That's it. Everybody else can come back. I don't know if everybody else does come back, but everybody else can.
Yeah. And there lies the rub with some of these targets that they're after. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. I think that should do it, shouldn't it, Parker? Did we cover everything?
I don't know if we have anything left to cover.
It was a pretty wide scope.
We'll have a bit more to cover in a few days here.
Yeah.
Once a few more of these decisions come down, most notably Schmidt tomorrow.
Yeah, and we'll probably have a state of the recruiting, kind of a quick podcast coming up for you guys over the next few days as well. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's probably going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor. Sooners podcast powered by Riverwind Casino. If you're not a member of OU Insider, sign up. Yes, we are moving to On3. However, we're On3 rivals, On3 times rivals, whatever you want to call it. However, we're still around, and we're still going to be bringing you the same content every day. It's going to be fun. We get to work with some of the best in the business, and they're combining, which is I'm going to say it's a relief because the landscape of the national recruiting operatives that we get to deal with on a daily basis now is going to be pretty fun. So make sure you're on OU Insider VIP. Just go over to OU Insider, sign up. Before July 1st, it's $9.95 a month, $99.95 for a whole year. We'll dive into the costs and everything once it combines and all that. But yeah, go join us. There's lots and lots of stuff going on. It's been a busy board. We've got notes coming. We've got updates coming. We've got interviews coming. We've got summer workout notes coming. All of that is going to be coming on OU Insider VIP. You want to know who we didn't talk about was Jacob Eberhart, but we'll get on that in the state of the recruiting update. So I just totally slipped my mind, Parker. But yeah,
we got time. He's not announced until mid-July. So
nope. But he is a 4-star target that Oklahoma is pushing hard forward. But we'll talk about that as well. All right. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drumm. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast powered by Riverwind Casino. You guys have a blessed day.